God will never let you pivot into something that minimizes your purpose. When we choose not to lean into and trust God in and all through the pivot, God cannot fulfill the promise He has for our lives. God cannot give us the hope and the future, because if we don't lean into the pivot, if we don't choose to pivot, if we don't surrender to God, if we don't allow God to be God in our lives, we are going to be stuck right there. We will always be on the surface of our purpose. We will never go deeper into our purpose. We will never go from dimension to dimension. We will never go from glory to glory. We will never reach the level of impact that God wants us to have as His disciples. We will never do it. Hello, loves, and welcome back to the Dorcas podcast, where I'm empowering her to drop the cape and heal for real. This is a space where courage, clarity, and strategy meets real healing. So welcome to part 2 of To Pivot or Not to Pivot. How do we get from the Beyond the Healing podcast to the Dorcas podcast? And last week I explained that there's 2 parts to choosing to pivot. It's the power of the I, and it's part 2 is the power of God. Now, last week I talked about how the power of the I in the pivot, and it involves you starting with the truth. It involves you confronting your fears and then ultimately getting out of God's way. But the second part of the pivot is all about the power of God in the pivot. The pivot truly becomes powerful when God directs it. Like this part right here, it shifts from the self-awareness of the power of the I to me just being obedient to God. Me being obedient to God. God was requiring me to pivot, and either I was going to obey or not. So it started with the self-awareness piece of me being real with me allowing God to show me, and me breaking up with the identity of just healing, and embracing the identity of Dorcas so that God can use me for whatever He desires for me. And so once I went through that self-awareness, that self-discovery, and understood the power of the power of God was whether I was going to obey or not. And that's what it's about. Once I got honest with myself, God made it clear that this pivot wasn't optional. It was necessary. Even though he presented it as optional, it really wasn't optional. It wasn't optional if I desired to be obedient to God. If it wasn't optional if I desired to trust God ultimately. It wasn't optional if I desired to just allow God to be the God of my life. It wasn't optional if I wanted to become everything that God created me to be. And so that's the power of God in the pivot. It's the obedience piece. It's the obedience piece. And so looking back over this experience, this journey of whether to pivot from beyond the healing or not to pivot, God initiated it. Like I didn't, the idea just didn't come from nowhere. This was God ordained. This was God's plan all the entire time. That's how God operates. You know, He talks about in Isaiah 43:19, behold, I am doing a new thing. And the reality is God is going to always be doing a new thing. Like we were put on this earth to go from glory to glory, from dimension to dimension. In order for us to do that, God has to do a new thing, okay? A new dimension, a new glory. That's the reality of it. And in those new things, there we have to pivot. We're not starting over. We are pivoting. We are moving up. We're moving into a new direction. So God always initiates the pivot. And the pivot often begins with discomfort, interruption, or just God nudging us to go left when we're trying to go right. That's the thing. And, you know, the last episode of Beyond the Healing was, I want to say, in June. And I told my audience then, I'm not going to be gone for that long. I'm going to be back. But here we are almost 6 months later. And I'm just coming back. And I wasn't comfortable just coming back. In all honesty, I knew God was shifting me. He was requiring something new of me. I just didn't want to accept it. That's the reality. And there was a discomfort in accepting that here I got settled in beyond the healing. I got settled in showing people what life is like beyond the healing. But the reality of beyond the healing is that there's always going to be a pivot. You cannot get comfortable beyond the healing. So why was I trying to get comfortable in beyond the healing? That part. So God had to disrupt. He had to interrupt my comfort zone. He had to interrupt what I was getting comfortable doing. That was providing a space for other people. Like God was being God. God was being God. And God is willing to disturb whatever we're settling for to lead us into what He designed. God will disturb and disrupt whatever we're settling for to lead us into what He designed. Because He did not create us to settle. He did not create us to just be comfortable and complacent. He created us to elevate us. He created us to continue to grow, continue to move, to continue to be used at different dimensions and different glories. Like, that's what God created us for. So whenever we get to a point where we're settled, wherever we get to a point where we're comfortable and complacent, God will disturb and disrupt it just as sure as He is God. That's it. That is it. And me choosing to lean into the pivot is me understanding that, like, the power of God as much as the power of me. God gave me the freedom of choice, but God is the ultimate navigator. God is the ultimate orchestrator. God knows the plans He has for me. God knows. And so no, this pivot wasn't optional. Was it uncomfortable? Yes. Did I have to face some things? Yes. But that is a part of God's plan. That is the part of God's plan that is all about elevating us and being and using us at different dimensions, at different levels. Because in all honesty, the people that we are assigned to, they are at the next level. So if we remain complacent and content, if we remain comfortable in the lane that we're in, if we remain complacent on that one path, God cannot use us to impact the people that are beyond the pivot. God cannot use us to touch the lives of the people that are assigned to us at the next level. So no, the pivot is not optional. If you think it's optional, I'm sorry. I'm here to tell you it's not optional. It is necessary. It is necessary. And if we allow God to be the God of our lives, if we allow ourselves to be obedient, and if we allow God to show us in the pivot, He will show us Him. He will show us a portion of His plans. He will show us the necessity of the pivot. He will show us that the pivot isn't punishment. That the pivot is not God's way of stopping us. The pivot is not God's way of hindering us. The pivot is God's way of positioning us. The pivot doesn't equal punishment. It equals positioning. Positioning us for His plans. Positioning us for prosperity. Positioning us for the hope and the future that He has promised us. Because if we don't lean into and trust God all up in and through the pivot, we will miss it. We will miss it. We will miss the thing that we have been praying to God for. We will miss the things that God has shown us. We will miss the assignment. And the assignment is too great for God to allow us to miss it because we are afraid to pivot. We are afraid to pivot. And see, the reality is, the truth is, the thing that I want you to get is that God will never pivot you away from the purpose. He pivots you deeper into it. Come on now. God will never pivot you away from the purpose. He will pivot you deeper into it. God, this pivot from Beyond the Healing to the Dorcas Pittman podcast, God didn't pivot me away from the purpose because the purpose is still the purpose. He is allowing me to go deeper into the purpose because if I can be honest with you today, I was on the surface of the purpose. And see, I had to fulfill all of the purpose while I'm here on earth. So God could not allow me to remain on the surface level of the purpose. He needed me to go deeper. And in order for me to go deeper, I had to pivot. I had to pivot. And see, I had become complacent. I was complacent with interviewing. I was complacent with giving other people a platform to share their testimonies, to let you know what life is like beyond the healing. I was beginning to become complacent, even though I knew that there was greater. And that is why the shift had to show up. That is why the pivot had to show up. Because the pivot and the shift shows up when complacency starts feeling too small. When you know that this is good, but this is not. I know I'm called to greater. This is good, but I know that I'm meant for bigger. This is good, but I know that there's a bigger message on the inside of me. This is good. But because if God hadn't put that pivot in front of me, He knows that I would have stayed there. I would have stayed there. And the pivot was necessary. The pivot was necessary. So God had to initiate the pivot. God had to initiate the pivot. But even though God initiated the pivot, I had to trust God because I didn't know what this was going to lead. I mean, me showing up is just me on every episode. I haven't done that. Because I was afraid to stand alone, because I was afraid to just show up as Dorcas. I needed people to see healing. So I'm going to let people see what healing looks like through everybody else. That's all I want. I want people to see healing. So I don't want them to just see my healing. I want them to see other people's healing. I want them to see what beyond the healing is like for everybody else. I want them to know what the other side looks like. So me showing up weekly, it's just me. God, what's that gonna look like? Who gonna watch it? What I'm gonna say? I can't hold a conversation. I can't, feedback off other people. So you mean I gotta show up as just me? I have to show up and just talk to it's just me, God? Like, really? That's that. I don't. You sure about that? You sure about that? But the reality is, I'm not showing up as just me. I'm showing up with God. I'm having a conversation with you. I'm having a conversation with you. That part. And in really wrestling and talking to God about these things, like He really showed me Abraham. He showed me how by faith Abraham obeyed God, not knowing where he was going. I don't know where this journey is going to lead me. I don't know how many people are going to watch it. I don't know if anybody's going to show up and watch just me talking. I don't know. But I have to have the faith of Abraham. and obey even though it's not clear. That's obedience. That's faith. That's showing God that, oh God, okay, God, I trust you. I trust you, God. Wherever you take me, God, I trust you. Like, obedience is moving when it don't make sense. Like, okay, God, I'm on this journey. I'm on the road. Okay, I got my map. I'm okay. I know where I'm going, God. Here we are. We in this lane. I know where I'm going. Listen. I know where I'm going. So since I know where I'm going, I'm obeying. I'm obeying you on this road because I know this road. I know this lane. I'm good. We Gucci, okay? But that's not obedience. Obedience is, okay, God, I'm gonna shift. I'm gonna move to this other lane, and it don't make sense to me. I don't know this map. I don't know this road. I don't know the nooks and crannies. I don't know the turns. I don't know any of this, God. That's obedience. I wasn't obeying God like on the road I was on. I know this road. Oh, God, I'm good. I'm good, bro. I know this road. But obedience is when God tells you to pivot. I don't know this road. I don't know the speed traps. I don't know the nooks and crannies. I don't know where this road takes me. But that's obedience. That's trusting God when the road isn't clear, when the journey isn't clear, when the pivot isn't clear. And this is how God tests us. How God tests trust with movement and not clarity. Like, God tests our trust by the way we move when we don't have clarity. That makes more sense. Okay. God tests our trust by the way we move when we don't have clarity. When we don't know all the answers, when we don't know where the journey is going to lead us, when we don't know, when we're uncomfortable. Like, that's how God tests how much we trust. By whether we're going to move because we don't know, or we're moving because we do know. Because if you move and you know how to get there, you don't have to trust God. But when you move and you don't know where you're going, when you don't know how to get there, that's trust. That's obedience. That's faith. Like, God wants to know if we are willing to follow him without demanding all the details at the same time. Like, okay, God, I will do this. I will pivot from beyond the healing, but I need you to, I need you to give me every episode that I need you to download every title. I need you to give it to me right now, God, so that I can know what this thing is going to be. I need you to do that right now. That's the only way that I am going to pivot. I need to know the title. Okay, God, I'm going to pivot. I don't know the answers. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't know any of those things. And can I tell you, like, I was obsessing over it. But when I stopped obsessing over it and stopped trying to control how I was going to show up, that's when God gave it to me. That's when God gave it to me. And I had written out an outline of, okay, I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about that. And God, that list has shifted, has changed. I don't even know. It's gone. It's gone. Okay, God, where we going? What's next? Tell me when you're ready. Because I can't choose to obey you in the pivot. I can't choose to follow you and demand that you give me the instructions and the details at the same time. My trust and my obedience cannot be dependent upon whether or not you give me the blueprint. You just need to know if I'm willing to move. You just need to know if there's going to be movement before the clarity. And so that's what the power of God is. It's about. It's understanding that God always initiates the pivot, And then trusting God when the journey isn't clear, when you don't know where this road is taking you. And ultimately, in all of that, the pivot requires surrender. The pivot requires a surrendering. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. That's Psalms 37 and 33. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. God orders our steps. We don't order our own steps. When we order our own steps, we are responsible for the journey. We are responsible for everything that happens on the journey. That is not surrendering to God. A pivot is not you mapping out the directions. A pivot is not you being in control. A God-ordained pivot, a God-assigned pivot, a God-orchestrated pivot doesn't have a blueprint. The blueprint is faith. That's it. Faith and surrendering to the will of God. Like surrender. One thing I've learned I've really learned in this season of God taking me on this deeper level of in the purpose, is that surrender doesn't mean being passive. It means intentional obedience. It means intentional obedience. I am going to intentionally obey God, not passively. I'm going to intentionally obey God. God, what are you requiring of me? I am intentional with asking God, okay, God, what are you requiring of me? What do I need to do? What do you need me to do, God? It's intentional obedience. And can I tell you, this pivot, this shift is becoming easier as I release the version of my life I built without God's full involvement. Like, me being transparent with you, me being honest with you, there's a version of these past 3, 4, 5 years that I built without asking God, is this what you want me to do? Like, I've built based off my own will. I've built up by what I thought needed to be done for me to quote unquote make it. What I thought needed to be done to get the level of influence to where I can impact the people that I know that I'm called to. And so that didn't work out. It didn't. There has been impact. And like I said, like, I was on the surface of my purpose. But this pivot is taking me deeper into my purpose. But I had to denounce. I had to repent. I had to release that version that I built without God's full involvement. That version that I built without going and asking God, is this what you want me to do? God, what is your will as it relates to this? God, what is your will as it relates to this? God, how should I respond to this? That is intentional obedience, because I am intentionally asking God his will and then obeying that. That is intentional obedience. What I was doing was not intentional obedience. What I was doing was passive. Okay, God, I trust your will for my life, but this is what I think needs to be done for me to do this, this, and this, and this. Like, I wasn't, my purpose wasn't fully surrendered to God. There, I said it. And one thing about this space, one thing about me showing up as Dorcas, you are going to get what life is really like beyond the healing. And that's the caveat. That's what it is. You're going to really get what life is like beyond the healing, because let me tell you something. Life beyond the healing is still life. Life beyond the healing is surrender. Life beyond the healing is pivoting. Life beyond the healing is allowing God to be God in your life. Life beyond the healing is you going deeper into purpose. Life beyond the healing it means intentional obedience. So it was necessary for me to lean into this pivot. This pivot was necessary because God needed to use Dorcas. God needed to use the life of Dorcas, not just the identity of the healing. God needed to use Dorcas. And that is why he wouldn't allow me to name this podcast anything that relates to healing. He needed Dorcas Pittman to be front and center because that is the person that is the identity he needed to use. And so that's the reality. And there were so many monumental things that God showed me in this process of pivoting from Beyond the Healing podcast to the Dorcas Pittman podcast. And I mean, I can't even give you in one, it would take, I don't know how long it would take if I was to give you every aha moment, every I don't know, mind-blowing light bulb moment that God gave me. But one that I will share is that God will never let you pivot into something that minimizes your purpose. Me showing up in a space where it's just me is not minimizing my purpose. It's really adding value to my purpose. It's really taking me deeper into my purpose because I'm no longer hiding behind other people. I'm no longer hiding behind my healing. And God can really use me. God can really use me because I'm showing up. I'm intentionally showing up. There's only so much he can speak through me when I'm spending all my time interviewing and giving everybody else a platform. God says, you know what, no. I need Dorcas to show up. I need to speak through Dorcas because the people who are assigned to your voice, they are not going to hear you through you having conversations with everybody else every week. They're going to hear you through you showing up and allow me to speak through you. That is the thing. So God didn't minimize my purpose by shifting me and forcing a pivot from Beyond the Healing to this. God actually is elevating my purpose. God is taking me deeper into my purpose. That is what he's doing. That is what he's doing. Those are his plans. His plans are to prosper us. His plans are to give us a hope and a future. And when we choose not to lean into and trust God in and all through the pivot, God cannot fulfill the promise he has for our lives. God cannot give us the hope and the future because if we don't lean into the pivot, if we don't choose to pivot, if we don't surrender to God, if we don't allow God to be God in our lives, we are going to be stuck right there. We will always be on the surface of our purpose. We will never go deeper into our purpose. We will never go from dimension to dimension. We will never go from glory to glory. We will never reach the level of impact that God wants us to have as his disciples. We will never do it. Because the pivot requires us to go deeper. The pivot takes us deeper. The pivot conditions us. The pivot shows surrender. The pivot shows trust. So when I stopped forcing my own direction, God started revealing his. When I stopped forcing my own direction of God, I'm just going to hide behind my healing. God, I'm just going to let healing be the identity of of me. God, I'm going to continue to idolize healing. God, I'm going to continue to give other people a platform to share their testimonies. Because why, God? We overcame the enemy by the word of the Lamb, by the blood of the Lamb, and the words of our testimonies. That is biblical, God. So guess what? I'm going to do the word of our testimonies, God. I'm going to be comfortable doing my part of the equation and the word of their testimony. So I'm going to just get comfortable just having a platform for testimonies. God said, the devil is a lie. That's not what I called you for. Your purpose is deeper than that, daughter. Your purpose is deeper than that. So I want you to, as I wrap up this second part of to pivot or not to pivot, the power of God in the pivot, I want you to understand that you can't step into God-sized assignment with a comfort-sized mindset. I could not step into a God-sized assignment with a comfort-sized mindset. My comfort zone was, I'm gonna interview. My comfort zone was, I'm gonna provide the platform of testimony. My comfort zone was, God, I know this lane. God, I'm a good interviewer. God, you know what? I can do that. God, I can shine other people's light. God. That was a comfort-sized mindset. But my assignment is God-sized. And guess what? I could not step into that God-sized assignment staying in with that comfort-sized mindset. So God had to initiate a pivot. God had to initiate the pivot, and I had to obey. I had to trust God when the road wasn't clear. I had to trust God because guess what, God? That ain't me. God, I'm not used to just showing up as me, God. No, God. You sure? Listen, God, I'm not comfortable with that, God. Listen, God, I'm not comfortable with that. But God said, you know what? You are comfortable because I know who you are. You are Dorcas. You are Dorcas. So guess what? You are going to lean in this pivot. I am going to make you so uncomfortable that you don't have a choice but to obey me. And you are going to intentionally obey me because you are going to seek my face every way, every turn of this pivot, every step of this pivot. Because you are choosing to surrender to me. Because you understand that you are destined. Your assignment is so great that you cannot stay in the lane that you're in. You cannot stay in the lane that you're in. We all have God-sized assignments on our lives. But so many of us are not operating and actively and are actively operating in those assignments because we have a comfort-sized mindset. Just like healing is continuous, just like God is always gonna be stretching us, pivoting is going to be continuous because God desires to take us deeper and deeper into our purpose. So there's going to be a pivot. There's going to be a pivot. But in choosing to pivot or not to pivot, we have to understand the power of I, but also the power of God. That's the part. Understanding the power of I and the power of God. And realizing that we are put on this earth with God-sized assignments. So we cannot become complacent with a comfort-sized mindset. That's it. That's it. So listen. We are in the pivot. I've chosen to pivot. Beyond the healing is beyond the healing. But this is your home. This is the Dorcas Pittman podcast, where courage, clarity, and strategy meets real healing. And remember, you are her. I am her. Because we are healed, we are empowered, and we are restored. Until next week, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.